take credit for thinking about honey and honeycomb as the theme for the service today. But Ann Griffith told me that she had a book about bees and she was going to use it whatever the theme of the service was. So I figured I needed to probably get on board. Many of you are aware, I hope, that we have a bee ministry here at Creekside. There are 5 beehives in the back corner of our property. If you're in the parking lot, especially towards the north end, you might be able to see in the northeast corner towards Yellow Creek. There are some blue supers back there, bee frames. They're painted light blue. Ron Nicodemus and Scott Harney are the ones who have been heading up that bee ministry. They would be happy to take you back there to meet the bees sometime. It might be easier for you to look on Creekside's Facebook page. Larry Ford has taken some pictures of the beekeeping. There's a great one of Ron Nicodemus holding a bee frame. There is one of our kids' garden club who is also helping with the bees. Standing out in bee suits looking at the bees, and there's one of just a frame of bees. So for now, we have about 50,000 new associate members of Creekside out there. There's about at least 10,000 bees per frame. I want to tell you a little bit about these bees. You've probably heard that bees are great workers. Let me tell you, they put in more hours than your pastor does. They don't go to vacation in Michigan for a week, and they never complain. They are all female. I don't know what that means. That's just a bee fact. There are loads of interesting facts about bees and honey making. I'm not going to take the time to tell you those this morning because Ron Nicodemus has already put a lot of those facts in our newsletter in the Beeline feature in the connection. I'd invite you to read that if you want, but today I'm going to stick to bees and honey in the Bible. So if you have even a glancing acquaintance with the Old Testament, you have probably heard the description of the land which God promised to his people. A land flowing with milk and honey. Absolutely. Now, that sounds kind of sticky to me, actually. But milk and honey is shorthand, a way of saying a land of abundance and prosperity and goodness. It's a land where things are so good that it simply flows with milk and honey. It's a little bit like, if any of you know the Depression-era song about the big rock candy mountain, where you just lay around and root beer floats up and the rivers and there's candy on all the trees. It's a place that's so filled with good things that you don't even have to work for them. And of course, any place that's that good is pretty much like heaven, which is promised to all believers. So that's why in the ancient church, new Christians who were coming up out of the waters of baptism were given a sip of milk and a taste of honey. That was a foretaste of the promised land of heaven. A bit of honey is a taste of heaven. But there's another biblical tradition about honey, which is related, a little bit more complex. It's about the sweetness of God's word, the goodness of God's law. We heard this in the text which Jeff read, and which Diane found that text set to music from Psalm 19. The law of the Lord is sweeter than honey, and the drippings of the honeycomb. Psalm 119 is 176 verses celebrating God's law and commandments, and verse 103 says, "How sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth." God's word as honey is a lovely image of delight and goodness. And that was and is the Jewish attitude about the law. Not a set of rules or even a lot of fine print with information about how to follow the rules and what will happen to you if you don't follow the rules. The word Torah, which we use to often translate as law, could also mean teaching or gracious instruction. It's a gift. And like honey, God's word is not really satisfying if we just look at pictures of it. Or even if we read recipes about how we might be able to use honey in some of our favorite foods. The purpose of honey is so that we can eat it, so that we will enjoy it, take delight in it, and let it nourish us and make it a part of who we are. Eugene Peterson is the biblical scholar who did the paraphrase of the Bible called The Message. He has written a very memorable volume about spiritual reading titled Eat This Book. It's a great title. And it's based on an account from Revelation chapter 10. And I'm going to read Peterson's version of that because his telling of it is so good. This is John the Revelator having a vision about heaven. John saw a gigantic angel, 1 foot planted in the ocean and the other on the continent, with a book, a sermon, explosive with thunder. John started to write down what he was hearing. The book, what he was hearing. He'd never heard a sermon like this one, but then he was told not to. A voice told John to take the book from this huge angel, this God messenger who was preaching from this world-straddling pulpit. And as John did so, he walked up to the angel and said, "Give me the book." And the angel gave it to him and then said, "Here it is. Eat it. Eat this book. Don't just take notes on the sermon. Eat the book." And John did it. He put away his notebook and pencil, he picked up his knife and fork, and he ate the book. That is Eugene Peterson's version of Revelation 10. And it's a wonderful image of what it means to receive God's word, not just with our minds or our intellect, not with skepticism or criticism, but with the same joy and delight which we would taste and eat something which is sweet and delicious. It's even delicious the second time around, because this account from Revelation is a reference to a similar story in the Old Testament of the prophet Ezekiel, who was told to eat a scroll that had been written on by God. So here's a little bit of explanation. I appreciate biblical commentary and critique, including from scholars like Eugene Peterson. I believe that we should bring our minds and our own experiences to our readings of the Bible. But if we do that, even the most enthusiastic consumers of the Bible are going to come across some things that are hard to swallow. That's a different sermon. But as Christians, we have a responsibility to approach the Bible with an appetite for what is there, and an attitude which assumes that what is there is healthy and life-giving. In this account from Revelation chapter 10, John is warned that the book will taste sweet in his mouth, but be bitter in his stomach. And that's how it goes down. Because the voice tells John, after he eats the scroll, that he's going to have to go prophesy again. That is, he's going to have to share God's word with people who don't want to hear it, with folks who aren't particularly sold on that dessert. The words of God are not sweet because they say whatever we want them to, or give us only what we want to eat. The Bible isn't cotton candy made of spun sugar that dissolves in our mouths as soon as we put it on our tongue. Honey is the result of a lot of hard work. Some from the beekeepers like Scott and Ron, but primarily from the bees who create it. Those worker bees visit between 50 and 100 flowers to collect nectar every trip they go out. They will live for 5 or 6 weeks, and in a lifetime, one bee will make about 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. That's a lot of work for a spoonful of honey. Honey, especially in the world of the Bible, was not only a sweetener, it was a medicine. It had antiseptic properties for dressing wounds and was used as a salve for burns and cuts. Salve, or healing ointment, is of course related to the word salvation. In the Greek of the New Testament, the same word is used to mean to be saved or to be healed. The words of God are not only sweet in our mouths, they are the salve which brings health and wholeness. So I would invite you in this coming week to think of a favorite passage or verse from the Bible which you can carry with you. It works best if you can memorize it and carry it with you in your mind, but if you need to write it down as a reference, that's fine too. Words of strength and healing, words of promise or challenge, words like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, or rejoice in the Lord always, or surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. Or Jesus' words to his disciples, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. If you don't have a favorite that comes to mind, I'll have a suggestion that you can take with you on your way out today, or you can take some time to search for yourself. There are lots of online tools that have Bible verses by topic if you're searching for friendship or hope or love, or I would be happy to help suggest a verse to you. When you find a verse, I'd like to know what that is. Let me know, either tell me on your way out of church today, or text me or phone me or email me. I would like to know what you're carrying around in your heart this week. And I will share the verse that I'm going to be carrying around as part of our benediction today. I hope you have a sweet week filled with health and wholeness.